The body is a unit, though it is made up of many parts. And though all its parts are many, they form one body. So it is with Christ. For we were all baptized by one Spirit into the body, whether Jew or Greeks, slave or free, and we were all given the one Spirit to drink. Now the body is not made up of one part, but of many. If the foot should say, "Because I am not a hand, I do not belong to the body," it would not for that reason cease to be part of the body. And if the ear should say, "Because I am not an eye, I do not belong to the body," it would not for that reason cease to be part of the body. If the whole body were an eye, where would the sense of hearing be? If the whole body were an ear, where would the sense of smell be? But in fact, God has arranged the parts of the body, every one of them, just as he wanted them to be. If they were all one part, where would the body be? As it is, there are many parts, but one body. The eye cannot say to the hand, "I don't need you," and the head cannot say to the feet, "I don't need you." On the contrary, those parts of the body that seem to be weaker are indispensable, and the parts that we think are less honourable we treat with special honour, and the parts that are unpresentable are treated with special modesty, while our presentable parts need no special treatment. But God has combined the members of the body and has given greater honour to the parts that lacked it, so that there should be no division in the body, but that its parts should have equal concern for each other. If one part suffers, every part suffers with it. If one part is honoured, every party rejoices with it. Now you are the body of Christ, and each one of you is a part of it.
Well, we've been thinking recently about what it means to be a Baptist church, and today we're going to be thinking about unity in diversity. So covering both why we should associate with other churches, and also the importance of unity to Christ's mission in the world. So a few weeks ago we were talking about what it means to be a church, and we thought about how Baptists consider the church to be a gathering of believers committed to God and to one another. So why is that not enough? Well, the reading we just heard in Corinthians 12 to 27, we often read that and talk about our church family, but it applies beyond the local church. It applies to the church universal. And I love how Paul Beasley Murray expresses it when he says, "Fellowship is the lifestyle of the gospel." This joining together, this fellowship, is a picture that we see in the early church. Galatians 6:10 tells us, "Do good to all people, especially those who belong to the family of believers." In the New Testament, this family of believers and sense of fellowship goes beyond geographical boundaries, which is quite amazing if you think of the communication and the travel options in those days. But even then, it goes beyond sending greetings to another church, or just being aware that they're there. We see churches seeking advice on controversial matters, such as the council that was thinking about whether Gentiles should be part of the church. We see the provision of financial support, so we see really poor churches in Asia collecting money to send to the church in Jerusalem that was really suffering. And we see it's in common planning for mission, when some leaders gather, you can read it in Galatians 2, to discuss missionary strategy. We think of Peter and others seeing their missions to the Jewish people, and Paul seeing his to the Gentiles. So we see in the New Testament that the privileges and responsibilities of fellowship don't just apply to the local church, but extend beyond it. So associating with other churches is part of being the church. And this was expressed really early on in Baptist churches. So way back about, less than 50 years from when they began, they were making joint confessions of faith and saying that although they were distinct as individual churches, this was really for convenience sake. Only so many can meet in one place. But they were all one in a common communion. And despite being distinct, they agreed to walk by the one rule and have counsel and help of one another in all needful affairs, as they put it. And another group of Baptist churches agreed to confer on 3 matters. Not surprisingly, the same 3 matters we see those churches conferring with in the New Testament. Advice on controversial matters which could not be resolved by one church alone. Provision of financial support for congregations in need, and common planning for the greater glory of God. For anything that required carrying on by more churches than just the local church. And really that was the beginning of the Baptist Union, was the churches realising that they needed to work together for mission. So the Baptist Missionary Society was born out of that, and the union almost came out of that, this understanding that we can't do mission on our own, especially mission abroad, where the need was to, finance and send missionaries to work abroad. So how do we associate now? Well, we associate nationally in the Baptist Union of Great Britain, that now like to call themselves Baptists Together. It has obviously shared principles, that's what we've been looking at, the Declaration of Principle, but it also has some shared aims, which we're not going to look at now, but it has got some shared aims. They used to be called the objects of the Union, in other words, why we were uniting. So being part of the BU is not just a commitment to a particular way of believing, but also certain aims and working together as a wider Baptist family. And the BU is divided up into regions, and we are in the Southern Counties Baptist Association. And this is their strapline Inspire Connect resource, because as we spoke about when we were talking about authority, this is not a hierarchy, this is an associating together, and the regional ministry team are there to resource us and equip us. Our region is a very strange one. It's in Southern Counties, so you think it would be a bit at the bottom, but it actually goes from Guernsey, up through the Isle of Wight in Southampton, right up Oxford, Banbury, and even somewhere called Bideford-on-Avon, and from the west, Weymouth and Dorset, right through to Maidenhead and Slough. So it's a sort of strip up through the middle, really. And this week, Pray For Us, Elaine and I are going to be in conference with the Southern Counties Baptist Association, where we gather together, and again they want to equip and resource us. On the island, we are in a cluster with the other Baptist churches, so Ryde, Sandown, Ventnor, Holwell and Castlecold. And we associate with the churches in this town, usually through Churches Together. And how much do we really actually associate? As minister, I meet with the other Baptist ministers every month, even if it's on Zoom at the moment, actually fortnightly on Zoom. I belong to different Facebook groups where I can plug in with other Baptist ministers all over the country, and I'm fortunate that I get to go to leaders' days and conferences. And hopefully I'll be encouraging more folk to do that. Jackie came to the Leaders' Day, didn't you? A while ago. But as churches, I'm not sure we do very much, do we? I think we find ourselves very busy. It's hard even to be involved in one church, let alone do things across churches. But also I think we've become very individual in our thinking. Even when I was looking for hymns and songs today, I found some with really great words about being church together. Hymns that use the word we in the Baptist praise and worship. We're going to sing one in a moment, but we've never sung before. Because a lot of the more modern songs are very much about that personal relationship with Jesus. And we've very much lost our sense of being we, and of journeying together, and building one another up, and equipping one another. And even as clusters of churches, we think individually as well. I know when I was at college, one of my colleagues was in a church that was very poor. They were struggling to replace their boiler and do essential repairs. And when she went to her cluster meeting, a church up the road was commissioning its fourth stained glass window and having another refurbishment. So where's the sense of being a body together and helping one another? And that's just church, not even looking at actually the well-being and if the needs of members of the churches. But we do confirm. And even locally, churches together has sort of gone a bit by the by with the pandemic and needs to be revived. But even then, sometimes in localities, in a town, there's a sense of competition between churches I've heard people speak about it here, we want them to come to us. Well, that's not a whole body way of thinking, is it? The way we think has become very individual. So it's something to think about as we go forward, I think. Are we enough here as one body, and are we enough in joining with those in our town and our island and beyond? Well, let's sing now. Perhaps stay seated, and we'll sing this song that John was amazed. It's Charles Wesley, and he hadn't heard of it. It's the long tune, but do sing along if you're able. But if not, just reflect on the words, because I think they're really precious.